Hi, friends. Welcome to episode 3 of the 40 Days and Nights podcast.
Woohoo!
It's so weird. We're like week 3. Like, we're just on a roll.
I know.
Time's flying by.
It really is. It's the pandemic, you know? Time doesn't exist in a
Honestly,
pandemic.
it really doesn't. Yeah. I remember, it feels like not that long ago, we were just like talking about this on Zoom. Like, what if we did this thing? Yep. And now it's real. It's crazy.
Yeah. I'm glad that we made it come to fruition though. It's kind of like those things like when you text a friend and you're like, hey, we should hang out sometime, and then you never do. But we followed through this time.
Which is impressive because 4s aren't the best at follow through. We're really good at talking about stuff, not following through. Yep. So we actually did something.
Take that, naysayers.
That's some growth right there.
It's the only thing I actually followed through this year. That's not true, but
I think with the pandemic and everything, that's super fair that we managed to actually follow through on one project. I think that's quite a success.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, this week,
right.
I'm going to be sharing my story. Last week, Sarah was super awesome and shared her story about her faith life and deconstruction. And this week, I'm going to talk about mine, which is awesome and kind of nerve-wracking at the same time.
Yep.
But it'll be good, though. This is important stuff to talk about, So, we have stories. Yep. We gotta share them. Or we don't have to. We get to.
That's a good distinction.
Yeah. So should I just jump right into it?
Yeah, I'm ready if you are.
Well, similarly to Sarah, I'm also a pastor's kid, but I did not grow up Lutheran. I grew up Methodist. And if you know anything about the Methodists, they move people around a lot. Some of my family moved around a lot all over Ohio. And then when I was in 8th grade, my family decided to leave. I had been really involved in church up to that point. I loved it. My brother hated everything related to church. But I loved it. I loved VBS, I loved youth group, I loved helping with worship and choir and all of that stuff. But then by the time I got to 8th grade, when we left, I was just kind of like, if this Christianity thing is just a bunch of people being really mean and deceptive and hateful, I don't think I want to be a part of that. So when we moved back to our hometown, even though I was known as the pastor's kid, that was my persona, even though my dad wasn't even a pastor at that point, I was really wrestling with what I believed and if I wanted to still consider myself a part of a community that had been so hurtful to my family. And then when I was in high school, I started getting involved in a ministry that's notorious for being involved with high school students. And a lot of the people in my high school were involved in it. And I was invited to go every week by a friend for a really long time. So I decided to go and found community there, which I was really hungry for. When you're a high school student, you're desperate for people to want to like you and to be loved and known. So I felt that there, so I got more and more involved. I went to camp over the summer and had my first experience with a cry night, which if you're not familiar with that, it's the peak night of any evangelical a Christian like conference or camp or weekend where they basically like everyone rededicates their life to Jesus and everyone just cries about it. And it's very emotional, and the experience is built up to that peak for it to be super emotional and to like elicit an emotional response. It worked its charm on me perfectly. Um, and I rededicated my life that night, even though I'd been baptized and confirmed. Felt the need to rededicate my life again. Um, but I really started to understand what like a personal like relationship meant, what that looked like. Um, and then I went to college, went to Capital, and thought I was going to continue in that ministry, but actually ended up becoming involved in the same one that Sarah did. I wasn't expecting to, but I got pulled in by the fact that it was like the first time that I'd seen so many people, like using a very evangelical term, on fire for God, like seeing so many people who are so excited about their faith. And up to that point, like I hadn't experienced a lot of that. Like it was very embedded in my family, but beyond that, going to church, it just seemed like a lot of people went there on Sunday and left and had like no life change. So to go to a campus ministry where people were actually really serious about what they were talking about and wanted to experience life change, drew me in, and I wanted to be a part of it. So I got involved in leadership really quickly, started meeting with a person every week, like my first semester of college. Started getting involved with worship my first year of college, which ended up being really life-giving for me. And I'm really thankful for that, honestly. That still impacts my life today, and I don't know that I would have still, or if I would have experienced, like, or if I would have known just how life-giving worship was for me if I hadn't been involved with the worship team for this ministry. But I was, like, on the typical trajectory of becoming a full-time person for this. Like, I did all of the things. I led all of the groups. I was in pretty much every leadership position imaginable that you can get involved with, which, like, Sarah was pretty much the same way, in different roles of, like, just being so involved that you're basically, like, doing 20 plus hours a week of ministry alongside being a full-time student. So by the time I was a junior in college, I was like running myself into the ground. I was interning for this ministry and working a lot of hours a week on top of figuring out my life as a student, and I was focusing way too much on ministry and not enough time on school. And I was just like on a fast track to burnout, which led to a really horrible experience of mental health issues the spring semester of my junior year, which is definitely like probably a whole episode in itself of like the impact of depression and anxiety and how that impacts our faith. But that was really hard, and it was really hard to continue. Like, I was basically in like a fake it till I make it period. And at times also when I started to like have some realizations. My brother was in college, at the same college at that time, and so the second half of my junior year, he was a freshman, I started actually hanging out with more people who weren't Christians. Like, it had taken me that long to have a decent amount of friends who weren't Christian. And I started having the realization that I would never feel comfortable inviting them to anything related to the ministry that I was involved with. And that was a big sign for me of if I'm going to be involved with something or I'm living out my faith, I want it to be a place where anyone that I'm friends with would feel welcome and loved being there and not feel out of place or judged or under the cover, knowing that their sexuality is not affirmed. So that was a big thing for me. And then also, that was when, similar to Sarah, a situation with a student coming out, like, indirectly had an impact of, like, this weird thing of finding out about it through someone else and kind of nonchalantly, like, undercover, kind of being like, so she's not going to be involved in worship anymore. And I was just put in a really uncomfortable position that, yeah, was, like, I think hurtful for a lot of people. And then I was also put in a position of, like, having to communicate to other people about this, but feeling like I didn't want to out this person. Like, that was, like, not okay with me. So I had to basically just kind of, like, lie and say I didn't really know what was going on. And I just, like, I carried that with me for a long time, of just, like, the weight of knowing that I went along with it, even though I didn't agree with it, and feeling like I should have spoken up, I should have done something to, like, verbalize support for her, but instead I just, like, went along with it, and I also, like, started having a lot of theological questions too, of, like, seeing a lot of this stuff that I had been so sure of, like, start to fall apart. A lot of questions about, like, how could people's lives be living hell from the moment they're born, and then they still get sent to hell because they never knew who Jesus was? That didn't sound like a merciful and loving God to me. And realizing, like, Western, a lot of our theology is, and how it comes from a place of privilege and not having to worry about being a refugee or having our cities bombed all of the time, like, wrestling a lot with, like, oh, God has a plan for your life, and thinking, like, well, is God's plan for the people in the Middle East to, like, have their entire lives literally blown up to pieces? Like, that doesn't seem right to me. So a lot of wrestling, a lot of realizing that what I had thought was, like, good work was really just colonialism, with the cover of being in good faith. And I think I struggle with that too, because I think individually the people had really wonderful intentions, and those people really felt like they were being called to do that work. And I don't fault them for that, because I was in the same position. But structurally, institutionally, I think it's very colonial and very deceptive, and has kept a lot of places of the world in a cycle of dependence too, right? Where a lot of countries are super dependent on white Christian ministries to be able to function in their city, because we never give them a chance to develop their own, like, economy and agriculture and everything, for the sake of the gospel, right? So, like, wrestling with all of that at once, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I need to walk away, and just, like, take some time to process. So I met with someone and basically resigned. Can you resign from a volunteer position? From all of my leadership roles. I was supposed to be, like, one of the people pioneering, like, a whole new section of ministry to, like, reach out to a different, like, a whole section of campus, and continuing with worship and outreach and everything. And I said I can't do any of it. I couldn't fake it until I make it anymore. And I had already also agreed to do an internship with a church in Columbus. I had been attending that church for a while, and wanted to get a better feel of what church ministry looked like and what being on a staff was like. And I was really excited about it. But when the time actually came for me to do it over the summer, I would come home from church every Sunday and just start bawling because I was speaking things in front of a lot of people and I didn't know if I believed it. And I was singing words that I didn't know that I believed. And I felt so fake and like I was putting on this whole front and facade, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And I came home one day and my parents were like, something is going on, and maybe like we'll support you if you need to back away. So I did, and I left my internship too. So I left my campus faith community and my church faith community within like a few weeks of each other. Which like it's just now like I'm just now putting it together that like I pretty much like decided to leave my entire support system, which is a really hard thing to do. And I think that's why so many people, I understand why so many people stay in unhealthy spaces for so long, because it's easier to stay in that unhealthy space and still have a community. Not easier, but like it's just so hard to walk away from community and to risk that. And so I went into the summer pretty positive that I wanted nothing to do with ministry whatsoever, and also trying to figure out what I believed. I wasn't ready to give up on God, I don't think, but I had a lot of questions, and I didn't know where I fit. I knew where I didn't want to be. I knew what I didn't believe, but I didn't know what I did believe. So I started having conversations with the campus pastor at Capitol and one of my religion professors, who really kind of helped me deconstruct a lot of the things that I had experienced. And I realized that while like no denomination is perfect, right? It's very rare for any person to believe 100% fully with the denomination that they're a part of. But the place that I felt most at home was the Lutheran Church. So that's where I went. And along the way, I tried to find anything else other than ministry, including law school, which I, looking back on it now, no.
Sorry.
That's everyone else's response too, including my own. I don't know why I thought that would ever be a good idea.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I tried to find any other reason, like any other thing, public policy, social work, everything, just to not do ministry.
Yeah.
And God was like, LOL, you thought.
LOL.
That's like kind of my like whole discernment journey, I feel like, of just being like, I'm not gonna do this. And then God being like, well, yes you are, actually.
Yep. Nice try.
I remember like very fervently telling someone during college that I was not going to go to seminary. Specifically, that I was not going to go to Trinity. Like, literally, there's no way in hell I was doing that. And now, here I am in seminary at the place that I said I was never going to go to. So, you know.
Isn't that something?
It really is. Yeah. And then even in my first semester of seminary, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be there. I really struggled with it because I've always had this like sense of like feeling like I needed to actually be doing something, and like sitting in the classroom was a waste of time. I felt that when I was super evangelical, and it was, why am I sitting in the classroom when people are dying without ever hearing of who Jesus was before? and in a more like less spiritual and more physical way, in my first semester of seminary, it was, why am I sitting in a classroom when so many people are dying of preventable things like gun violence and hunger and police brutality? And I'm just sitting here learning about stuff that, in the wide range of things, doesn't seem to matter all that much. And I really, really struggled with that. But after lots and lots and lots of conversations and discernment, I realized that to really, truly minister to people in a healthy way, in the way that I wanted to, education and experience was the best way to do that. And ultimately, seminary was where I needed to be to do that. And I think I've gotten more involved in spaces now that, like, I'm able to, like, at the same time do things that I care about while I'm doing classwork, and that ultimately makes the classes feel like it's worth it.
Yeah.
No, oh, I just bumped my desk. Yeah, and so, like, that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah. Wrestling with a lot of things about the church and what our role in it is right now, and feeling frustrated about various things and responses, which I'm sure that we'll end up talking more about later on.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's been a hell of a journey, that's for sure. But I was having a conversation with one of my professors. He was helping everyone who did CPE debrief our experience, and he asked me about, like, he knows about, like, my deconstruction journey, and he was like, how was it for you being, because I was in the South, I was in North Carolina, right? So there was a lot of, like, evangelical fundamentalist free will Baptist theology going on in the hospitals, right? And he was like, what did that bring up for you? How was it for you? And he asked, like, did it make me frustrated to hear people, like, say theology in the hospital rooms that I thought was, like, really damaging for people? And I told him, like, honestly, I've been there. I know what it's like. So I was able to place myself where they are and to minister to them where they are because I've been there. And he was like, the fact that, like, you can still have empathy for a group of people that hurt you so much is just crazy. And I think that both of us are kind of in that unique place of, we've been there, and so we're able to empathize with the vast amount of people that are walking away and looking for something else, and for the people that are still there, because we were also there, and we, like, I know what it's like to be completely, absolutely certain that everything in the Bible is true, that anyone who doesn't believe in Jesus is going to hell. Like, I know what it's like to be completely 100% certain in all of that. I know, like, where that mindset comes from. I also know what it feels like to feel like the rug gets taken out from underneath you and all of that is gone. I was not expecting to get emotional. Jeez, wow. But yeah, I think that it's really important that we're in ministry and are able to understand that experience, because I think, especially within the past 4 years alone, the amount of people who've walked away from the evangelical church because of its support of the administration and the things that it has done and the things that it stands for. Like, I think it's just going to continue in that direction. And so having people who have been there and know what it's like to be able to accompany them in that is going to continue to be really important.
Yeah. And I think that accompanying and journeying is so important. And, you know, we just finished CPE, and that was the whole thing of it. Like, just being with people in the places that they are. Because I definitely had people saying theology that I didn't agree with. But because it was what was getting them through the day, I was like, yeah, you gotta believe what is gonna help you right now.
Right.
Which is hard.
Yeah.
Because there's gonna be a point when it's not gonna help anymore. It's gonna hurt.
Right. Oof, man. Well, that's what I got. That's
great.
my story. There's probably a lot more that I'm just forgetting right now, or that could be unpacked in later episodes, but that's pretty much the gist of it.
Well, thank you for your bravery and vulnerability and sharing all of that. It's kind of hard hearing that, because I hear a lot of what I experienced. Mm-hmm. It's different saying it than hearing it, but I'm ultimately glad that we were both in that ministry, because that's how we met, but saddened that we experienced and other people experienced so much hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we're here now, and
we are here now.
Yeah. I'm not sure what my theology is in terms of how people end up where they are, but I don't think that it's a coincidence that we ended up doing this together. So, I don't know. God's doing something, whatever it is.
Yep. I agree.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening to my story. I appreciate it. And if you haven't, follow us on social media at 40DN Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. And if you've had a similar experience or you have questions for us, please DM us if there's anything that you would like us to elaborate on or talk about. We are so excited to get to talk to people, talk more about our experience and hear from you. So please feel free to share it with us. We would love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, it's just two of our own stories, but I know that there are so many stories out there of people with similar experiences, and we want you to know that you are not alone and that we affirm you in your deconstruction process. So with that, we will see you all next week.
Peace and love, friends.
Bye.